This is the LPL brief. Today I wanted to talk about Edward Gaming. If you've been watching the LPL at all, you know that Edward Gaming lost both of their games in the opening week to Royal Never Give Up, and then they lost one game to Invictus Gaming amidst pauses, and the rest of the set has been rescheduled. In the second week, they had a very, very strong, dominating 2 games over Vici Gaming. The difference is that in week 1, they played with Fireloli, their jungle sub, who is actually more of a streaming personality type player. He's just kind of a bench warmer. They bring him along to events so that they can write funny things about him in their blog, things of this nature. Clearlove is their primary jungler. He's also the team leader, I suppose. A lot of times they refer to Koro as their captain, but Clearlove is in charge of distributing most of the calls in game, and he's also a very, very strong jungler. He had very good performances and ramped up his form significantly last year. I'm first of all going to talk about the importance of having Clearlove on the team and playing with the team. The Chinese infrastructure for a lot of teams is not very strong. That's the first point to make. So a lot of it comes down to what types of personalities you have in management and leadership roles. Edward Gaming is considered probably the best team infrastructurally in the LPL because they have a very solid manager, they have a very solid coach, and they had a very solid team captain or team leader, even though Cora was called the captain. This doesn't always happen. A lot of the times the management doesn't necessarily enforce coaching decisions. The owners don't necessarily enforce coaching decisions. So it's really up to having a strong personality on a player who will enforce things for the team, who will be self-motivated, and that's who Clearlove is. Traditionally, a lot of people who have played with him or against him talk about how single-mindedly focused on the game he is. Even when he wasn't considered that strong of a player, a lot of teams wanted him just for this quality that he has, that he can effectively make your entire team listen or perform better, and he's a very strict type of personality. He has described his relationship with Wei Xiao as that they verbally beat each other to motivate each other to play the game well. And he's been described by Xiao Xiao as, if you're not playing and you're on his team, he will go over and he will kind of make you play. He'll poke you and make you play. This type of, as I already said, if your management and your owners aren't necessarily very strong, this type of player is very, very important for your team. I think Senshao is a great manager, and the ownership of EDG seems to be pretty solid, but it's still a fairly self-sufficient unit. Especially if you're losing your coach, because the first week they didn't play with their coach either. Rapid Star hadn't arrived and Aaron had already started his break, so they didn't have a coach. So in that case, especially working in-game with Clearlove isn't necessarily going to work very well. He doesn't also necessarily make the important calls. He listens to information from the team and then makes a decision. And by information, I don't mean the same kind of information you think about, oh, they placed a ward here, they're this bot, this sort of aspect. It's more like we should go, a bunch of people make a different call and say we should go to Baron, or we should go to their tier 2 mid turret, and then Clearlove picks one. The important thing is, though, that people are overlooking, it's just how terrible of a jungler Fireloli is. Like, he is very, very awful. He got out jungled by Kid, who is new to the role and hasn't been performing very well, has had a considerable amount of stage fright since before the World Championship. When I looked in detail at some of the pathing decisions Fireloli was making, he was significantly less efficient than MLXG. When I was looking at and comparing the two of them, he tends to ward in the exact same place, regardless of the side of the game that the team is playing on, and regardless of what time in the game it is in the first 10 minutes. He just keeps warding the bush behind red buff between the dragon on blue side. So he constantly wards that bush, even if the circumstances don't call for it, even if dragon's not in play, even if there's not really a good reason to be warding that bush. He just continuously wards that bush all the time. It's weird. I don't understand it. He missed a considerable amount of skill shots. He died so many times on Graves. He spent all this time farming and he still didn't have a competent amount of items. The one kill he got in game 2, because he was significantly behind MLXG in farming, Koro 1 was kiting the looper, the top laner, or not, it wasn't a looper because it was Xiao who had roamed top. He was kiting Xiao and waiting for Fireloli to show up. Fireloli, as Elise, misses his cocoon and then tries to auto-attack Xiao to death, while Koro 1 is extremely low on HP, but still adamantly trying to give Fireloli this kill because he's behind. Fireloli is not a good jungler. He's just not. I don't... Like, this is very important to discuss, because when the players on Edward Gaming wanted to join the team, the Korean players, Deft and Pon, they actually said in his birthday video that he was pretty much the reason they joined Edward Gaming, because if you see him in Korean solo queue, he's very, very strong. He tends to have ridiculously high win rates on his champions. Korean players call him free win, because if you're on his team and you lose a game in solo queue, you're probably just bad. He never really had the really, really strong jungle play in 2014, 2013 that he did in 2015. But players really liked him because of how he was in solo queue, and they liked playing with him at Deft and Pon. That was a big part of their decision to join the team. It's not just this idea of the in-game calls or anything like that. It's just how much more efficient Clearlove's pathing is, how much better his warding is. Against Dandy, he was out jungling Dandy pretty well. Like, he was out keeping ahead in farm against a Graves, which Graves is ridiculously good at clearing and ridiculously fast. But because Clearlove was playing champions like Rengar, like Nocturne, that don't have as much self-sufficiency or ability to stay healthy in games, he had to back more, but he still ended up with more experience and more gold. Having a jungler like that who really knows his way around the jungle, who you know is keeping tabs on the enemy jungler, will allow your lanes to play more confidently. They'll get cut out less. They'll make fewer mistakes. They'll die less. So all of the lanes were winning pretty well. Clearlove had much more efficient ganks. He at least burned a summoner every time he ganked, which Fireloli did not. And their teamfighting was just more coordinated because it wasn't Fireloli going into the fight and dying. So when people talk about how strong of a communicator or whatever that Clearlove is and that made the team stronger, I really think you're undervaluing the difference between Fireloli as a jungler and Clearlove as a jungler, because it's ridiculous. It's just completely insane. And having a good jungler makes your life as a laner much easier. Just like having good laners makes your life as a jungler much easier. So I just wanted to talk about that aspect of Edward Gaming. I really, really don't want Fireloli to play more. I think Edward Gaming, if they want to develop him as a talent, need to focus on playing him in scrims and keeping Clearlove in the main games, because this is just not feasible. Unfortunately, Clearlove did say in his post-game interview that he will continue to rotate with Fireloli for now, because he really wants Fireloli to develop. He thinks Fireloli is an aggressive jungler who can become much more efficient in the future. I hope he's right. I don't see a lot of promise, but I think every time Fireloli plays, EDG will just lose, whereas every time Clearlove plays for now, they'll just win.